me to hold off. How was lunch? Was it good? Yeah? I thought it was pretty good. It wasn't too starchy, so you guys shouldn't start yawning, right? Right, it is. It might be. You might be. Well, you guys will laugh. So, I flew in last night from the States. I got in about 1 a.m. So, a couple hours of sleep, and part of I haven't been in pre-sales for a few years, so I was lucky to find my pre-sales counterpart. When they told me that this was going to be a show, demo show, I thought, well, that means that my demo environments need to work, and of course, while I was riding the plane last night, all of my servers went to sleep. So we're going to have a little bit of a combination of I'm going to show you a video of what it's supposed to look like the baked cake, and then you're going to see me fumbling, trying to bake it. But I kind of consider myself I've graduated from the pre-sale side of me. I have teams that typically do this, so we're going to give it a shot, okay? And I just ask your permission to let me make a few mistakes. But what I want to show you is just I consider myself more on the business user side than I do consider myself on the technical pre-sale. So hopefully Mikhail can save me if I can't answer a question and you guys ask questions that goes into some detail that I might not necessarily be as passionately familiar with. So I'm going to do two things. One is I thought I would do is share with you, if you were at the keynote presentation, I brought up this slide, and it was part of what we call the ladder to AI. And so if you think about where the know your data, trust your data, use your data fits into what we do on a day-to-day basis, it really does fall into these kind of capability areas. And so what I wanted to and again, with your permission, what I wanted to do was go through a quick scenario about, how do you go into a catalog, search a data asset so that you can figure out what it is, know what you have, potentially add an asset as a business user, right? And then we do have a technical user experience that IBM has had in the market for some time called Information Governance Catalog. So if you're an IBM user and you've used Information Governance Catalog, that might look more familiar. What we did is about 2 years ago, we started a project called Watson Knowledge Catalog. And one of the things that IBM, so I've been here just about 2 years. Actually, on the 29th is my 2-year anniversary. And when I joined, there was a whole team that was spun up around design thinking. And if you haven't participated in any project that has design thinking, what it does is it really brings together product management, the design team, and the development team together. And what you do is you sit on the same side of the table with the users and you watch what they're trying to do. And you look at where they fumble, where do they have shortcuts, where do they have sticky notes, what's the job to be done, and then you design a user experience that is tailored to that role and that task. So Watson Knowledge Catalog was born in that world where Information Governance Catalog was really born out of necessity with technical engineers, right? So you have a very technical metadata user experience, and then Watson Knowledge Catalog came in and it was a beautiful, kind of easy to use, easier to navigate. So my role as part of portfolio optimization was to look at organizations that are building the same product and bring them together. So last summer, we brought Watson Knowledge Catalog, that team and the design thinking experience, to Information Governance Catalog, which is a technical metadata experience. And what we've done is basically allowed our customers to inventory data assets. I'll show you that. Search using like a Google-like experience. If you don't know where the data comes from, gives you a visual way to explore where the source is, who's the owner, okay? So I'll share with you that. And then the idea is that once you've identified an asset that you can trust, there's a new organizational structure that's becoming quite popular is a data prep organization. And the data prep team takes these assets and munges them so that they can create a version of that file for data scientists, for a specific type of report. It's basically that last mile of taking a data asset that might be, kind of the raw materials and turning it into something that actually is imported into, a Tableau report, a Cognos report, or even a machine learning language. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So bear with me. And then if I do run into problems, I might have to ask my trusty pre-sales guru to bail me out. Awesome. All right. So I'm going to start. Actually, let me start with a video because I think what's the best way to do it is to show the baked cake. So let me just blow that up. Can you guys see this all right? It's not too. Let's see. Let me make this big. It's not letting me do it. Okay. So, Information Governance Catalog is a place where data curators identify new assets that need to be ingested so that they can then be curated. Someone looks at it, reviews it, and then publishes it to something like Watson Knowledge Catalog, where a user can then go in and search and explore. So what you're seeing here is essentially a curator is identifying doing a search for a customer data warehouse. Sorry, let me click out here. And it brings all of this technical metadata that you can see. But what we want to know is, where did this data come from, right? So this is again, it's a technical exploration of, here's this table. It came from a data transformation job that started with a sequential file, right? This is actually quite useful because a lot of times when you start with an asset, you don't know where it came from, right? Being able to go in and quickly, one click, identify where it came from saves you time and money in terms of, how many people are touching this, where did it come from, and has that lineage changed, right? The next thing you can see is it also has some labels. So in this particular table, like you can see there's assets in here, and there's one that you don't really know what it means. CLV. What does CLV stand for? Whoops. My my audio. Can you guys see this still? Not back there. There it goes. Wow, isn't that scary? So the idea is, a person has been assigned to identify an asset. They go in, they look at what tags have been classified through automatic classification. And one of the things that Information Governance Catalog provides is the ability to look at the values in those tables. And if a data asset has been curated before with similar data values, it'll suggest how to classify that data. So for example, if you have something that looks like an email address, it'll recommend and suggest that this field is an email address. In the case of CLV, we don't know what that means. So we can click on that column and notice that there's a glossary term called customer lifetime value that someone's already predefined. Now what's nice about that, as a curator, what your role is to assign those business terms to the data. And if it already recommends it because of previously ingested assets, it's just a matter of confirming that this is the right classification tag for the data. Okay. And what I think the other thing that when we look at the process or the handoff between the curator and the consumer, a lot of it has to do with, is there a governance team that owns the source data? Do they all agree on what the definition of customer lifetime value is? And the person who has the power to then publish it for a catalog, do they follow the right workflow so that whenever someone is searching customer lifetime value data from the catalog, they can know and trust that it's there? So now Susanna is a person logging into the Watson Knowledge Catalog. And let me just pause for a second. So you kind of saw that technical user experience. It seemed, it was very graphical. It used breadcrumbs to annotate where data sources came from. It had different icons to show if it was a table, if it was an asset, if it was a term. Well, now we're into a business user who's going in, they want to look for certain assets. Susanna is now in Watson Knowledge Catalog user experience and is able to search the catalog. And all they have to do is, they can have personal catalogs that they're managing at a departmental level, or they have an enterprise catalog that allows them certain access to assets across departments. So in this case, what you can see is that Watson, remember in my presentation, let me just pause this for a second. Watson is embedded in a couple areas. One is, based on what this person, Susanna, has done in the past, it'll build a recommendation list of other assets that may be relevant to the types of projects that Susanna worked on before. So it kind of gives you some of that social feedback of who's using it, why are they using it. You'll also notice that it has highly rated and recently added. So I bring that up because if you remember in my presentation, a lot of times the feedback from users is just as important as whether or not someone's using it for a technical project or whatever. So here whenever we start using an asset, you'll notice that there are reviews and stars along the bottom that can then be incorporated into when someone searches for it. If a lot of users said, hey, this is a great asset, you can see the 5-star rating. If a lot of people use it and said, this is poor quality, it will get flagged and it'll get sent to a data quality analyst to identify why is this in the catalog when the quality is so poor. So we start to use things like social media type style interactions to promote that. And then of course recently added. So she's going into this catalog, the enterprise catalog, and you'll notice on the top there's a search bar. So very simply, she's going to put in there, I'm searching for a customer data. And because it's based off of the same metadata repository, it will bring up assets that she's allowed to access that the curator has published. So when we talk about an enforced catalog, what we mean is that there are privacy policies that might be associated with that table that are enforced whether you're a curator, whether you're actually using the data for a particular project, and it uses your access control mechanism so that if you don't have access to it, but let's say you're not allowed to have access to the data, but you're allowed to see the metadata, you can have that level of granularity at the user level. So in this case, you'll notice that she's looking at this asset, she's looking at the business terms, it has customer lifetime value, so she has the ability to confirm that it does in fact have, it is using the right version of the data. You'll also notice, I'm just going to pause it here because it might be a little small to see, is there's a little lock along the top there. And you can see that there's some garbled numbers for customer number and credit card number. So when we ingested this data, I mean, obviously this is a fictitious example because PCI would never allow credit card number to be in here to begin with. I mean, we know that. But it's a good example, right? So roll with me a little bit. So the idea is that you want to show that, hey, this information is here. It has a security policy. We're gonna block you from seeing it, but just the fact that you know that it's there gives you the opportunity to do something with it. Now, like I said, it's a little bit fictitious because we know that this isn't quite a real example, but you get the point, right? So the idea is that when you're a catalog user and you're like, well, why does this look like garbage? And I know that this is credit card data, you can click on that little icon and it'll show you that this is private data, this is the data protection policy, and that's being enforced, which is great because that's what you don't want to block people from seeing it. You want to explain to them why they're not allowed to see it. And that usually gets rid of a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt associated with governance versus having full access to data. So the next part of the process is I'm a user. I want to understand and trust that the information that I'm looking at is something that I care about. So what we've done is and part of this user experience, and for folks that are using data assets for reporting or whatever, they want that visual feedback, right? So being able to go in, preview the data, and you'll notice there was a couple of screens ago, there was like green bars that showed the quality or like the distribution of the values. That becomes one of the biggest time savers I've seen in the entire industry. If you can help people who are managing the data or need to use that data for something else, give them basic capability to view, to understand the heuristics of the information, to show classifications or category data quality, all of that, if you can make it visual right up in front and as part of your kind of understanding the data, it saves so much time and effort. It eliminates the need to have all those back and forth emails, back and forth calls and conversations to folks when they don't understand what data it is, they don't understand, where it's coming from. So part of Watson Knowledge Catalog is a big part of it is visualization. And I think in a few seconds you're going to start to see that we're going to start to visualize this. And what's really great about the visualization is that it doesn't require a separate license for a reporting tool. And again, it's not, a fully baked reporting tool, but it does provide, the ability in this case to show a quick distribution of, this is customer sales data, so it's showing where the products are being sold. You can switch the type of charts. So in your world, I imagine if you could give your customers self-service access to the data, this probably would be very helpful for them. They may need to take a little training, of course, but the idea is that if they can go in here and do this type of visualization. Another example is, let's say we want to know for particular product sales, let's call it, binoculars. This is one of the examples I use in the demo. What's the average age of the buyer, right? So again, if a team is asking for a set of data that they want to be able to then publish into a report, the analyst that's searching for the data can easily look at the data and then say, yep, this is, not only is it giving me the information I need, but it's, by default, whoops, when I went back, sorry. When I paused it, you'll notice that the bar chart changed because you can do basic manipulation. Like, for example, the default report was showing a scatter chart plot. We changed it to a bar. The default was actually summing the age, which doesn't really make sense. So they could manipulate a little bit and do the mean. And now what you can see here is, and again, I'm bringing you into this story, but hopefully you can translate this to your organization, that the average age of people that buy binoculars is 51 years old. Who knew, right? But the idea is now that this information, the person who's providing the data to the report can answer a lot of the questions on their own. And this is something that I feel has been missing for years in terms of the data, governance, data curation process in many of the products today. So let me pause for a second. You guys following along the story a little bit? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, let me pause. Yeah, structured, right? Yeah. So the quick answer is yes, but, right? And I'm sure you guys have used that before. This capability is primarily focusing on structured data because by the time it gets to a curator, there's been some processing done. However, if you have unstructured documents that are sitting in a file share or in a Hadoop cluster where you have like, let's say, clickstream data, there's a couple of options there. One is we do have the ability, IBM is integrated into this process, has the ability to evaluate documents and classify and create recommended catalog or classifications of content that's in the document using technology that we acquired through a company called Stored IQ. So Stored IQ was in the unstructured document management, records management, kind of regulatory side of the business. They did a lot of document scanning, creating indexes of the content on it, and had a very robust ability to then tag it from a classification perspective. We recently integrated that functionality directly into catalog. So it may not, I can't show it here. So the but is, it's coming out in the next version where that user experience will include some of the unstructured document. Sure, for sure. Yeah. So let me switch into a live example. And hold on a second. So in the tooling itself, Watson Knowledge Catalog is a new user experience. I'm logged in as an administrator. So what you can see in this common data platform is a set of capabilities. So the but is that the unstructured content's not here. I'm going to come back and show that to you. So Watson Knowledge Catalog is new. We have an information governance catalog, new user experience. I'm going to show a little bit about that because it actually has some pretty cool visualization. And it does show the ability to show that when data comes in as unstructured, it potentially is part of that lineage. So that when it does become structured and you use it for other reporting, you can actually tie it back to unstructured data. So I'll show that in a second. You'll also see an enterprise search. We'll show that. That's a super straightforward start with, I have no idea what's in here. I'm just going to start searching. give me, it's an exploratory discovery user experience. And then I don't know if we're going to have time to cover the rest. Data Stage Flow Designer is our high-end data integration ETL capability. So many folks may know Data Stage. It's been in the market for years. Data quality, so information analyzer is a capability to, like, as you're ingesting assets into the catalog, information analyzer is a technology that looks at patterns in the data and determines whether or not it's looks like, smells like an email address. It also has the ability to, based on certain quality rules that you define, identify the quality and assess the quality of that asset before you ingest it. So you can start to build rules. When you start to build rules into your data integration jobs, you kind of use the data quality tools to discover what would be your rule that would apply to that kind of data, and then you can operationalize it in data stage. And then there's some administration and management. So let's start with enterprise search. So what I like about enterprise search is that it's pretty simple. So let's say I want to bring up that customer table. I enter customer, and in a matter of seconds, it actually shows me the types of assets that are relevant to when I typed in customer. And then it'll show you for each asset type kind of like a breadcrumb of where it comes from. And so the first one there, the customer ID, you can see that it shows you this really cool visualization. And this is based on Janus Graph, so graph database technology. And any metadata that is stored as part of this platform gets incorporated into this visualization. So you can kind of see customer ID has, customer file 2 and a data class called customer number. But if I wanted to double click into any of these assets, if there was more related, I could drill down into and explore relationships. I mean, if I had picked, something a little bit more complicated, it probably would have, popped out a lot of these. Let me see. So like you can see if I click the plus sign, it'll drill it down some more. And in this, I picked a bad example, but you can kind of see, like, it shows this customer file is assigned, has this customer retention and acquisition label. It is governed by this data quality rule, customer ID cannot be blank. It shows that this woman, Donna, is the steward of this file. So if I have any questions about it, I could answer a lot of questions that I might have just by looking at this diagram and kind of self-discovering and understanding it. So now that I know this file exists, so know your data, I can start to trust that where it came from and who I need to go to figure out more information about it so that I can then use it. So that's what enterprise search is intended to solve for. If I go into, I want to look at all the assets that are available to me in more of a bucket, like here are the hierarchies, these are the different glossaries, these are the different databases and connectivity. I can look at it if I have the privileges to see these by, again, this is my catalog, but it shows, quite a bit. It even shows transformation jobs, etc. Right? If I go into, oh, of course, it's about to expire. If I go back into, this is the screen that you saw from the video. So this is a technical user experience. Let me close out of there. And now I'm back into, I'm logged in as Emma. I want to search the catalog. I can either start searching right up here. I can do customer here, and it'll bring it up, or it'll give me, I need to log in. Or it'll give me access to all the assets that are associated with customer. And you can kind of see there's a tag associated with PII. Let me go ahead and drill down into that. And there was an error retrieving the asset, and it says it doesn't look, there's either an outage, or this asset might delete it, or you might not have permission to view the asset, which makes sense because I'm not logged in as an administrator as Emma. I'm logged in as a user, so it looks like this data is not allowed for me. So the reason for showing that is, I can either have full access, go into the metadata, see the data masked, or I can block it and say this person can't see it. All right. Yeah. If I had practiced my demo probably a little bit sooner than yesterday, I probably would have picked a better user that would have had some of that stuff configured for sure. So in this case, it looked like this user was just a business analyst, and I didn't set the classifications right. So it was user error. I don't know, Mikhail, if you have a better answer for that. Right. Thank you. All right. So I think we're kind of switching gears now. So we've done a search. We showed how, tags would automatically get assigned based on classification. I didn't go through that cake making process, but you saw how customer lifetime value was associated with certain assets. Then I went into discovering and showing how I could find out where that customer table came from, what the columns were, how it got, who's the owner. And then I showed a user, simple user access of being able to search the catalog. Next thing I want to do, let me kick out of here, is let's now say that that asset has been published and curated. Whoops, let me just minimize this. Let's switch gears, and I'm going to move into data prep. So let's assume that you are I guess it's not going to let me make it bigger. Let's assume that you're a business analyst, and this is the dashboard that your team is designed that you need to create. And you have all these data assets that you searched in the catalog, but now you need to do that final step so that it's in a format that then could map to this type of report. So in this example, I'm gonna show the baked cake, and then we'll go into the tool, and I'll show you a couple examples. So a couple of things that you can see here. You can see profit by state, you can see order value by year, and then you can see sales by source, and this is domain. So one of the opportunities that you have is using a data prep tool. If one of your fields that's coming in, let's say, is clickstream, a data prep tool that has a lot of the kind of intelligence built in, it could be a JSON file, it could be clickstream, whatever, it will allow you to incorporate that file into a panel like this. This is showing advertising clickstream, and the top one is customer orders. And then map the data that you have to a target that you want to create. So I'm going to just repeat that. This is actually some of the coolest stuff that I've seen. I use this product quite a bit. We just signed an OEM agreement with a company called Trifecta. So if you're familiar with data prep, Trifecta is the leading data prep product in the market. We just signed the agreement with them at the end of March. We'll be releasing a version of the product that's an IBM branded version of it that's integrated with the catalog. So the idea is that you have these assets, you can then search those assets from within a data prep tool, and you can start to add them to this palette to start building kind of a recipe for how you want to go from these data sources to a target. And what I'm showing here is I've got sales leads, database account, and I got advertising clickstream. It could also be a JSON file as well. Okay, and then what I have down here is a target, and it's basically a file format of all of the data fields that I need to populate for that dashboard report I showed at the beginning. Okay, and the whole idea here is this is intended for someone that doesn't necessarily have programming skills. They know enough about the business to be dangerous. They know enough about the data to be dangerous. And really what they want to do is accelerate how much time it takes them to do this. Because the alternative is manipulating in spreadsheets, maybe having some access data manipulation tools, etc. So what I just showed here and the video is showing is I added that target file, and what you see along the top, these rows, these are all the target fields that I need to populate. User ID, customer key, event type, ... And what the technology does is it tries to match as many fields that I've put on that palette to the target based on its understanding of what the target should be. Okay, so in previous runs, we've had target data files and it's stored some of that information about what does that target data look like. So the first thing it'll do, and again, what this is a huge time saver because what it's done is given me my task list of the data files that I need to map to in the same kind of user experience as the person that has to figure out how to combine these. Anytime that you see these little orange bars, that means that there's a data quality. That's how much data might not necessarily match what it thinks it should be. So it's a data quality issue. I can show all of those columns listed by list, and you see all of these red. These are all the target columns that don't have a match. So the first thing I'm going to do is, remember I had two data sources. I had customer sales and I had clickstream data. What I'm doing now is I'm saying I want to join these two files together. And what it'll do is I simply click this little button here. There's this little icon. It's a frequently used transformation. And it's giving me the option of saying, hey, these two columns have a pretty high percentage of match, right? So in this example, it says a 79% match. So what I can do is, because I'm doing this join, this drop down here says inner join, left, outer, etc. I don't really know what that means, so I'm going to let the system tell me. The left returns all matching rows, dot, 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 dot. So as a user, I can start to learn the language of SQL without actually having to write SQL code. And now what it's done is it's merged these two data files together, and it says, okay, now, based on my target, I think I have a match. And you can kind of see it's green, 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 but I need to confirm some things. Anything that's red, whoop, it's going to do that to me from time to time. Give me a second. I was just getting to the best part, right? So what you can see is that it's basically showing anywhere where I've got those two green arrows together, it's saying, oh, this data actually matches. But now you can see I have some quality issues. And a lot of times, date coming from two different files, the formats never match. In fact, I've been in this business for a long time, and date timestamps are always the number one issue I have because every computer system does it differently. Well, what this technology does, it uses clustering algorithm. And what it does is it says, I see three types of data file formats. And you can suggest, I'm going to pick this one as the one I want to standardize, and it'll tell you how many rows it needs to change. And you can kind of iterate which one you want to use and which one you want it to be your target. So that's essentially what we're doing here. We're saying there's a date format here, there's a date format here. If I pick the top one, this is how many I'm going to have to change, etc. And at the end of this, within a matter of seconds, it'll create a new row. It'll remove or column with this common standard date format, and you can choose to remove the previous column with the three different types of formats. So something that would have taken me probably a couple days in regular expressions to merge and get that right, I was able to do pretty quickly without a computer science degree. Another example, when you're doing machine learning, one of the things that you want to be able to do is make sure that if you have a data set, and it's going to keep going through some really cool examples here. If you have a data set that has high range and low range, and then a nice Gaussian curve in the middle, a lot of times what your data scientists, machine learning algorithms are optimized is to have that data normalized, have it have a perfect Gaussian figure, and get rid of some of the anomalies. So as part of what you're seeing here is the ability to go in and not only you redistribute the data for machine learning, but also in this example, it's pulling out, this is the URL tag, you can say I want the product ID to be the data value that I want to extract out of here and use it as part of my reports in this case, or machine learning model. I can simply use a URL function, select that part of the string, and it'll automatically give me the ability to create a new column with that product ID. And it does the same thing with JSON. So if you have a JSON file coming in, it'll automatically decompose it and offer to you separate columns that you might want to create in your data set based on an input field that's a JSON file. Okay. Let's see, what's another example here? So another example is, let me just pause this here. Is this useful or helpful? hopefully this is kind of bringing data integration to what they call the citizen data engineer, I think I've heard before. So here's an example. Now that we've standardized one of our columns on the date and time format, one of the fields that this particular marketing dashboard is looking for is how long did it take for my customers to go to the website and then convert to a purchase, right? I mean, it's a common example. So what you can do with this type of user experience is you select the two date columns, and there's a menu that says these are all the date functions that you can do, and one of them is date diff. So it'll give you a difference between a start date and an end date, and you'll notice that that's this conversion time is what this field is, and that then they're all negative values because I selected start date and end date, and it created negative values. I can say, oh, that's backwards. I should just go back and put end date, then start date, and I'll have a positive value. Doing this here in a nice iterative, getting rapid feedback is going to improve the quality of this process going forward so that the next time, when it gets published into an operational process, the error in that logic doesn't flow through and cost a lot of money from a development perspective. All right, so I think we're getting kind of close to the end of this demo. Any questions so far? A lot. Good. But this is an example of what self-service data prep looks like, right? It is quite powerful. I think there's a few more examples that this is showing clustering. So another example is if you have different sources of data, and this is using an example of company name, it'll group names of an entity, and you can group them based on, actually one of the options is phonetics. So what does it sound like? So it has built-in machine learning algorithms based on, this is what it says in the text, and this is the phonetic predicted conversion of it, and it'll group things together based on what they think it sounds like. And that becomes, again, a data quality process that you're incorporating into the data prep process. I think that's about it. And now it's just generating the file and then creating the output. That's just, so far so good. It worked because it was a recording. So, questions?